Hi, it's Lynn Shuck with Healing and Balance, and we are discussing ankle range of motion today. Most of us have very tight feet. Part of that is the way we use them. Part of that is the shoes that we wear, and I've talked about that in other videos. You're welcome to go look at those. But how to address that and how to understand what full range of motion could look like, we want to work toward it using two different poses. Now, I use the word pose lightly. To me, if you're doing something in your body and paying attention to how you are in that, in order to create greater awareness of how you move, that's yoga. So technically, one of what I'm going to teach you isn't yoga, and one of what I'm going to teach you is yoga if you're looking at classical yoga poses. But to me, it's all yoga anyway. Another thing I want to remind you of is, which I've said for 2 decades of teaching now, tight muscles are not strong muscles. Strong muscles can contract, they can extend, and they can relax. And our feet mostly are just held stiff. And some of the muscles are always contracted and some of them are always extended, and they're very rarely really relaxed. So we're going to work on extending muscles in different directions, contracting muscles in different directions. I use the term point and flex. Technically, this is dorsal flexion and this is plantar flexion, but I have found in my classes most people without too much thought process can remember pointed and flexed pretty easily. So those are the words I'm using. I do know that this is plantar flexion, just so you know. And we're going to start with a pointed foot. So we're starting with what's called a top of the foot stretch. This comes from the movement world. It comes from Katie Bowman. And she may have learned it somewhere else, but it's who I learned it from. And you're going to take the top of your foot and place it on the floor behind you. Now, right now, this knee is bent. And I have my knee sort of coming straight down from my hip. And my pelvis is upright. And this may be as far as you get in this stretch. If the top of your foot feels tight, if this feels painful, this might be as far as you get. If this is okay, you can go further back, straightening the leg. The support leg stays straight the whole time, and the pelvis stays upright the whole time. And if even that's okay, you could take more weight back on the top of that foot. Now, having said that, when you step your foot back, we have a tendency to drop the ankle out. You want to make sure that that ankle lines up straight, doesn't roll in, doesn't roll out. And so most likely you won't get your pinky toe down on the floor when you're in this pose. So as we take the other side, again, you might start with a bent knee. And if that feels okay, you go further back. And you may discover one foot feels really different from the other. And then again, if that feels okay, you could take that further back. You still want to be upright, but now I have some weight in that foot. Whereas here, I'm pretty light on it. It's just the weight of my leg doing it. Now, if all of these are still painful for you, there's some ways to create ease and still work on this. One of which is I'm on carpet right now. Doing this on wood is quite a bit more intense. So put some carpeting down, or rather find where there's carpeting. If you don't have carpet, you can fold up a towel, something to create a little cushion. If even that's still too much on the top of your foot, next time you're sitting in a chair, tuck one or both legs under. The chair will be holding up most of your weight, and you just have the weight of your shin really dropping down into that foot. It won't be a lot of weight, and that can be a way to start working on this. I will tell you, I have yet to find a single pair of shoes that you can do this in, so you do need to do this barefooted, sock-footed. Part of why this is so intensely painful for some people, and you want to ease into it and work with the chair first, is that most of our shoes have the toes curled up. Look at your shoes next time you see them sitting on the floor and see how the toes curl up. Unless you've specifically looked for shoes that don't have that, most of them curl up, which means you're living with this bend. Hello. You're living with this lift and this tightness in the top of the foot. So of course, taking it in the other direction and putting some weight on it would be a lot. So that's the top of the foot stretch. The next thing we're going to do is called chair pose, Utkatasana. And in chair pose, you start with a parallel stance, and I use the outside edges of the feet parallel. And you want to have your feet fairly hip width apart. You're going to bend at the knees and at the hip and at the ankle. So now we're creating dorsiflexion in the ankle, a flexed foot. The shins are pressing forward, the thighs are pressing back, and I'm staying fairly lifted in my torso. I'm not going down here like a squat. I'm trying to go as low as I can go, keeping weight in my heels, taking my shins forward, taking my hips back, and keeping somewhat lifted through my torso. Notice I'm not vertical, but the center of my weight, my head goes right over my heels. I don't know if the head is, anyway, you get the picture. There's this line straight down from my heel straight up, and I'm kind of splitting the difference around that line. And then you're going to press into your heels to come up. So this is work for the leg muscles, and extension in the bottom of the foot and contraction in the front of the foot now. Shins are pressing forward, thighs are pressing back, torso stays somewhat lifted. Squeeze down into the foot to come up to standing. We're going to do it one more time and hold here. You can think of squeezing in at the top of the thighs without the knees moving in, and see if that allows you to get a little lower. Again, shins are going forward, thighs are going back. There should be more weight in your heels than in the front half of your foot. And press to come up. So we did something that contracted the front of the foot, extended the bottom of the foot, and we go back to the top of the foot stretch. One of the things I love about yoga is discovering how one pose impacts another. And so after doing that chair pose, what happens to your top of the foot stretch? Now for me, top of the foot stretch isn't particularly painful, but what I know is after that chair pose, I can take more weight in my foot with much less discomfort. For some of you, you may just find being here doesn't hurt as much, isn't as tight feeling, isn't as tender. So you want to just see what are the differences. Or maybe you were here before and now you can go back a little. Yoga poses get repeated in a practice because one pose changes another. And you can start to see how one pose impacts you. So working back and forth with these two poses, chair pose, Utkatasana, and top of the foot stretch, you just might discover increased range of motion at your ankles. And that would be a good thing.